After my son's funeral, the landlord called me. He said he found something in the house we'd been renting for my son and his wife. Documents hidden in the basement wall. He told me not to tell my son-in-law. I drove there immediately. When I arrived and he showed me what was behind that drywall, I understood why. Medical records, insurance policies, text message printouts with timestamps. My son-in-law's face went pale when he walked in and realized I knew. But let me tell you how we got here. I knew something was wrong before I even stepped into that basement. You can smell a renovation the way you can smell a lie. Fresh paint, sawdust, that sharp chemical tang of joint compound. The landlord, Tom Breslin, was waiting by the side door when I pulled up in my 2019 Honda CR-V. He was holding a crowbar and a garbage bag, and his hands were shaking. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "I need to show you something before we have to deal with clearing out the house. But to understand why those documents mattered, I need to go back to the beginning. My son Daniel met Mackenzie in 2016 at a charity 5K in Burlington. She was volunteering at the water station, wearing a bright yellow volunteer t-shirt and Lululemon leggings, hair in a perfect high ponytail. Daniel was 26, working as a project manager at a solar installation company. Mackenzie was 24, worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove a 2015 Audi A4 her parents bought her. They were engaged within 8 months. I should have paid attention to the first red flag. November 2016, Thanksgiving dinner at our house. Mackenzie brought a gluten-free pumpkin pie from Whole Foods that cost $47. When my daughter Emily asked if she could try a piece, Mackenzie said, "Oh, this is really just for people with dietary restrictions. I brought it for myself." She cut exactly one slice, wrapped the rest in foil, and took it home. Daniel laughed it off. "She's just health-conscious, Mom." By March 2017, they were married at Lake Champlain in a wedding that cost $83,000. Mackenzie's parents paid for most of it, but they made sure everyone knew. Her father gave a toast that included the phrase, "We're investing in our daughter's future," 3 times. The financial control started small. June 2017, Daniel mentioned Mackenzie had suggested they combine their bank accounts for easier budgeting. She worked with a financial advisor at Wells Fargo and set up a system where his paycheck went into a joint account, and she allocated funds to different categories: groceries, gas, personal spending. Daniel got $400 a week for discretionary expenses. "It's actually really helpful," he told me over coffee at Starbucks that July. "I was terrible with money before. She's keeping us on track." September 2018, they announced Mackenzie was pregnant. I was thrilled. My first grandchild. But when I offered to throw a baby shower, Mackenzie said she'd already planned one with her friends and her mother. "We have a very specific vision," she said. "It's at the Ethan Allen homestead. We've hired a caterer, and we've registered at Pottery Barn Kids. The minimum gift is $75 to make it worth the venue cost." I bought a crib that cost $240. October 2018, Daniel called me at 11:47 p.m. "Mom, I need to borrow $800, just until Friday when I get paid." His voice sounded hollow. When I asked why, he said Mackenzie had moved money around and his card got declined at the gas station. He sounded embarrassed, humiliated. I sent the money through Zelle immediately. On Friday, he paid me back, but something in his voice had changed. My granddaughter Lily was born February 2019. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. I went to the hospital and held her in the maternity ward at the University of Vermont Medical Center. Mackenzie was on her phone the entire time, texting with her mother about the birth announcement for Instagram. She'd hired a professional photographer to come to the hospital. The shoot cost $550. Daniel looked exhausted. When I asked if he was okay, he said, "I'm great, Mom. This is everything I wanted." But I watched him that day, how he looked at Mackenzie before speaking, how he checked his phone constantly like he was waiting for permission to relax. By June 2019, things got worse. Daniel and Mackenzie were renting a house in Shelburne from Tom Breslin for $2,400 a month. It was a nice colonial with a big yard, 3 bedrooms, attached garage. Mackenzie had decorated it with furniture from Home Goods and Pottery Barn. Everything looked perfect, Instagram perfect. But when I visited in August 2019, I noticed Daniel had lost weight. He was 30 years old but looked 40. When I asked him about it, he said he'd been stressed at work and was trying to eat healthier. Later, when Mackenzie was upstairs with Lily, he admitted he'd been skipping lunch most days to save money. The $400 weekly budget didn't stretch far enough, and he felt guilty asking for more. "She works so hard managing everything," he said. "I don't want to make it harder on her." December 2019, Christmas at our house. Mackenzie brought Lily dressed in a Burberry dress that cost $180. She took 43 photos for Instagram, making Lily pose over and over until she cried. Daniel tried to pick Lily up, and Mackenzie snapped, "Not yet, Daniel. We need the shot with the tree." My daughter Emily whispered to me in the kitchen, "I don't like her." "Me neither," I said, "but what could I do?" Daniel loved her, or he thought he did, or maybe by then he was just too tired to leave. March 2020, the pandemic hit. Daniel's company went remote. Mackenzie's pharmaceutical sales job slowed down, but she still made good money. I called Daniel every week to check in. He always said everything was fine, but I could hear Mackenzie in the background directing his answers. "Tell her we're doing great. Tell her Lily is thriving." September 2020, Daniel called me and asked if I could watch Lily for the weekend. They needed to go to a wedding in Boston. When I picked up Lily, who was 18 months old by then, she had a bruise on her arm. When I asked Daniel about it, he said she'd fallen off the couch. But the way he said it, looking at Mackenzie first, made me wonder. I kept Lily that weekend. She was quiet, observant. She didn't cry much. When I gave her chicken nuggets from Chick-fil-A for dinner, she looked at them like she'd never seen fast food before. "Mama says nuggets are for poor people," she said. She was 18 months old. I should have done something then, but Daniel was an adult. I couldn't force him to see what I saw. By January 2021, Daniel had been working from home for nearly a year. One afternoon in February, he video called me from his home office. Behind him, I could see Mackenzie had turned the third bedroom into a home gym. Peloton bike, weights, yoga mats, everything pristine and organized. "She works out every day now," Daniel said. "It's good for her mental health." What he didn't say was that he wasn't allowed to use the equipment because Mackenzie said he didn't respect the investment. That's when I started my own secret, small at first. I opened a savings account at Lake Champlain Bank under just my name. I called it Daniel's Emergency Fund in my mind. Every month, I put in $300 from my retirement income. By April 2021, I had $1,400 saved. It wasn't much, but it was something. I didn't tell anyone, not my daughter Emily, not my husband Richard, especially not Daniel, because if Daniel knew, Mackenzie would know. And if Mackenzie knew, she'd find a way to take it or stop me from helping. June 2021, Daniel mentioned casually that Mackenzie was having him sign some paperwork for estate planning purposes. Life insurance policies, beneficiary designations. She'd explained it was about protecting the family if anything happened to him. I asked him to send me copies. He said Mackenzie kept all the important documents in a safe deposit box at Citizens Bank and he didn't have access. That was the second time alarm bells went off. I kept saving. By September 2021, I had $4,200 in the account. I told the bank to send statements to a PO box I'd opened in Winooski. Richard thought I was being paranoid. "Why all the secrecy?" he asked. "Because something's wrong," I said. "And when it breaks, Daniel's going to need money that she can't touch." October 2021, Daniel called me from work. He was crying. I'd never heard my son cry like that since he was a child. "Mom, I think I'm losing my mind," he said. "I can't do anything right. Everything I do makes her angry. I forgot to buy the organic milk yesterday, and she didn't speak to me for 6 hours. I'm walking on eggshells constantly." "Leave her," I said. "I can't," he said. "She'll take Lily. She's already told me if I ever tried to leave, she'd make sure I never saw my daughter again. She has texts I sent when I was angry. She's recorded conversations where I yelled. She's built a case, Mom. She's been building it for years." I knew then that Mackenzie wasn't just controlling. She was calculating. I doubled my monthly deposits, $600 every month. By March 2022, I had $11,400. Richard still didn't know the full amount. I told him it was just a little savings for the grandkids. Close call number 1 came in May 2022. Mackenzie called me out of the blue and said she was concerned about Daniel's spending. She'd noticed some cash withdrawals from their account and wondered if he was hiding something. She asked if he'd mentioned anything to me about money problems. "No," I said. He seems fine to me. Well, if he asks you for money, please let me know, she said. We're trying to teach him financial responsibility. My blood boiled, but I stayed calm. Of course. After that call, I knew I had to be more careful. I started depositing cash instead of transferring from my main account, so there was no electronic trail. I'd take out $500 from the ATM at Hannaford and deposit it in person at the Lake Champlain Bank branch in Burlington. The teller knew me by then and never asked questions. By August 2022, I had $17,800 saved. That's when Daniel got sick. September 14th, 2022, 6:32 p.m. Daniel called me from the emergency room at UVM Medical Center. He'd collapsed at work. They were running tests. Mackenzie was with him. She got on the phone and said, "It's probably just stress. You know how Daniel is, always dramatic." But I heard something in her voice. Not concern, satisfaction. The tests came back inconclusive. They sent him home with instructions to follow up with his primary care doctor. Over the next month, Daniel got worse. Fatigue, nausea, weight loss. He went to 3 different doctors. They ran blood work, did imaging, checked everything. Nothing definitive. Mackenzie posted on Instagram about being a caregiver and how hard it was to balance work and taking care of a sick husband and a toddler. She got hundreds of sympathetic comments. I visited the house in October. Daniel looked terrible. Gaunt, pale, weak. Lily was 3.5 and she kept asking, "When is Daddy going to play with me again?" Mackenzie was in the kitchen making a green smoothie. "The doctors say it's probably chronic fatigue syndrome," she said, "or maybe Lyme disease. They're not sure. Honestly, I think he's just depressed and won't admit it." November 2022, Daniel was hospitalized again, this time for dehydration and malnutrition. He couldn't keep food down. The doctors talked about doing an endoscopy, checking for autoimmune disorders, running more tests. I sat with him in his hospital room. Mackenzie had gone home to put Lily to bed. Daniel looked at me and said, "Mom, I don't think I'm going to get better." "Don't say that," I said. "I'm serious," he said. "Something's wrong, really wrong. And if something happens to me, promise me you'll take care of Lily." "Daniel, promise me you won't let Mackenzie keep her from you," he said. "Promise me." I promised. Close call number 2 happened the next week. Richard discovered the Poe box key in my purse while looking for stamps. He asked what it was for. I told him I'd been sending letters to an old friend and wanted privacy. He looked at me like he didn't quite believe me, but didn't push. That night, I transferred $9,000 from the Lake Champlain account to a new account at a credit union in Montpelier under just my name. I called it Lily's Trust, even though it wasn't a real trust, just a savings account that Mackenzie would never know existed. December 2022, the doctors finally diagnosed Daniel. Stage IV pancreatic cancer. It had metastasized to his liver. They gave him 6 to 12 months with treatment, maybe 3 months without. I was there when they told him, so was Mackenzie. She cried. She held his hand. She looked devastated. But that night, when I stayed late at the hospital and Mackenzie went home, a nurse named Shonda pulled me aside in the hallway. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to tell you something," she said. "I'm not supposed to, but I saw something in his chart that bothered me." "What?" I asked. "They ran a toxicology screen as part of his workup," she said. "There were elevated levels of arsenic in his blood. Not enough to be immediately lethal, but consistent with long-term low-dose exposure. The oncologist noted it but said it could be environmental. But Mrs. Patterson, environmental arsenic exposure doesn't usually present this way." I felt ice in my veins. "Are you saying?" "I'm not saying anything officially," Shonda said. "But if I were you, I'd ask questions. I'd ask a lot of questions." I went home and I researched arsenic poisoning. The symptoms matched everything Daniel had been experiencing for months. Fatigue, nausea, weight loss, gastrointestinal issues. It can mimic other illnesses. It can accelerate cancer growth. I didn't know what to do with this information. If I confronted Mackenzie, she'd deny it. If I told Daniel, he was too weak to fight. If I went to the police, I had no proof. So I kept saving money. And I started watching Mackenzie more carefully. Daniel started chemotherapy in January 2023. It was brutal. He lost his hair, couldn't work, spent most days in bed. Mackenzie posted about it on Instagram with carefully curated photos. Daniel with a brave smile, Lily holding Daddy's hand. Mackenzie looking beautiful and strong in her Lululemon leggings and North Face jacket, the devoted wife. She got 3,000 new followers. I visited every week. I brought groceries, helped with Lily, sat with Daniel while he slept. And I watched Mackenzie, how she made his meals separately, how she was always the one to bring him his medications, how she controlled who visited and when. February 2023, I caught her. I'd come over early one morning to drop off soup for Daniel. I let myself in with the key they'd given me. Mackenzie was in the kitchen, grinding something in a mortar and pestle. When she saw me, she jumped. "Jesus, Margaret, you scared me," she said. "What are you making?" I asked. "Just some herbal supplements for Daniel," she said, "to boost his immune system. Turmeric, ginger, that kind of thing." But the powder in the mortar didn't look like turmeric, it was white, crystalline. "Where did you get the recipe?" I asked. "Online," she said, "from a holistic health website." She threw the powder down the garbage disposal and turned it on before I could get a closer look. That was close call number 3. I knew then that I needed evidence, real evidence, but I didn't know how to get it. By March 2023, I had $24,700 saved. I was depositing $800 a month now, taking it from my retirement account and my part-time job at the library. Richard was getting suspicious, but I told him I was saving for a cruise for our 40th anniversary. Daniel got worse. The cancer wasn't responding to treatment. By April, the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. Hospice came to the house. They set up a hospital bed in the living room. Mackenzie played the grieving wife perfectly. She took a leave of absence from work to care for him full-time. She posted about it constantly, cherishing every moment. Love never gives up, fighting together. But I saw her in the moments she thought no one was watching, checking her phone while Daniel gasped for breath, sighing with impatience when he needed help to the bathroom, snapping at Lily to be quiet when she cried for her daddy. May 2023, Daniel could barely speak. The hospice nurse, a woman named Patricia, told me privately that he probably had days, not weeks. I sat with him every afternoon. Mackenzie usually went out during that time. To run errands, she said, to get a break. One afternoon, May 17th, I was alone with Daniel. He was unconscious most of the time, but he opened his eyes and looked at me. He tried to say something. I leaned close. "Basement," he whispered. "Documents behind the wall." "What?" I asked. "Hidden," he said. "Tell Tom." "Not her." Then he closed his eyes again. I didn't understand. I thought he was delirious from the morphine. Daniel died on May 23, 2023 at 2:14 a.m. I got the call from Mackenzie at 2:47 a.m. She was crying, hysterical. "He's gone, Margaret, he's gone." I drove to the house immediately. The hospice nurse was there. The funeral home was on their way. Mackenzie was in the bedroom with Lily, who was 4 years old and crying because she knew Daddy wasn't going to wake up. The funeral was May 28th. Mackenzie wore a black Armani dress and Gucci sunglasses. She cried beautifully. She gave a eulogy about their love story that made everyone in the church weep. She held Lily's hand and looked like a tragic figure from a movie. I gave a eulogy too. I talked about Daniel as a boy, as a son, as a father. I couldn't look at Mackenzie while I spoke. After the funeral, there was a reception at the house. Mackenzie had catered it with food from Lunig's Bistro, probably cost $2,000. People came and went, offering condolences, eating catered sandwiches, drinking wine. I helped clean up. I stayed until everyone left. Mackenzie looked exhausted, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine. Lily was asleep upstairs. "Thank you for everything, Margaret," Mackenzie said. "Daniel loved you so much." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to accuse her, but I had no proof. I went home. The next day, May 29th at 10:47 a.m., Tom Breslin, the landlord, called me. "Mrs. Patterson," he said. "I need you to come to the house. Don't tell Mackenzie. Come alone." "Why?" I asked. "Just trust me," he said. "Daniel left something for you." I drove to Shelburne. Tom was waiting outside. He looked nervous. "Daniel called me 3 weeks ago," Tom said. "He said if anything happened to him, I needed to wait until after the funeral and then show you something. He made me promise." He led me to the basement. In the far corner, behind some storage boxes, there was a section of drywall that looked newer than the rest. Tom took out his crowbar and pried it open. Behind the drywall was a plastic storage container. Inside were documents, folders and folders of documents, medical records from Daniel's doctors showing the elevated arsenic levels. Printouts of text messages between Mackenzie and someone named Brad, dating back to October 2020. Thousands of messages, love messages, sexual messages, messages about waiting for the life insurance to pay out. Bank statements showing Mackenzie had opened a separate account in just her name and had been moving money into it for months. A life insurance policy on Daniel for $750,000 that he'd signed in June 2021, the same time Mackenzie had him signing estate planning documents. The beneficiary was Mackenzie. A handwritten letter from Daniel to me, dated May 10, 2023. I opened the letter with shaking hands. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know what Mackenzie's been doing. I figured it out in March when I found the receipts. She's been poisoning me. Slowly. With arsenic she ordered online from a chemical supply company under a fake name. I have copies of the orders in this box. I also know about Brad. He's a pharmaceutical sales rep she met at a conference in 2020. They've been planning this for 3 years, waiting for me to die so they could be together and split the insurance money. I went to the police in April, but they said I didn't have enough proof for an arrest. They said I needed more evidence. I've been too weak to gather it, so I'm leaving it to you. Everything you need is in this box. The toxicology reports, the messages, the financial records, the insurance policy. Please, Mom, don't let her get away with this. And please take care of Lily. Don't let Mackenzie destroy her too. I love you, Daniel." I sat on the basement floor and cried. Tom stood there, not knowing what to do. When I could breathe again, I looked through the documents. Daniel had been thorough. Text messages between Mackenzie and Brad talking about just a few more months and we'll be together soon. Bank statements showing Mackenzie had moved $63,000 from their joint account to her private account since January 2023. Venmo transactions between Mackenzie and Brad labeled dinner and hotel with heart emojis. Receipts from a chemical supply company for arsenic trioxide research purposes only shipped to a PO box in Mackenzie's name. Screenshots of Google searches on Mackenzie's phone recovered from Daniel's access to their shared iCloud account for arsenic poisoning symptoms and how long does arsenic stay in system and life insurance payout timeline after death. Everything. I called my lawyer, Janet Reeves, from the basement. I told her everything. She said, "Don't touch anything else. I'm calling the police. Stay there." Within 2 hours, 2 detectives from the Vermont State Police arrived at the house. Detective Sarah Morgan and Detective Keith Halloran. They photographed everything. They took the boxes into evidence. They took my statement. They took Tom's statement about Daniel's phone call. Then they went to talk to Mackenzie. I wanted to be there, but they wouldn't let me. I went home and waited. That night at 8:15 p.m., Detective Morgan called me. "We've arrested Mackenzie Patterson for first-degree murder," she said. "We're also looking for Bradley Kellerman. He's her alleged co-conspirator. We believe he may have helped her obtain the arsenic and may have been financially benefiting from the plan." I couldn't speak. "Mrs. Patterson, your son was very brave," Detective Morgan said. "He knew he was dying and he made sure she wouldn't get away with it. The evidence he compiled is substantial. The district attorney is confident we can get a conviction." "What about Lily?" I asked. "Mackenzie's parents are claiming custody," she said. "But given the circumstances, and the fact that Daniel specifically mentioned you in his letter, you have a strong case. You should call a family lawyer immediately." I called Janet Reeves back. She referred me to a family law specialist named Robert Chen. I met with him the next morning, May 30th. He reviewed Daniel's letter, looked at my relationship with Lily, and said, "We'll file for emergency custody. You're the maternal grandmother, you have a documented relationship with the child, and the mother is in jail for murdering the child's father. We have a very strong case." We filed on May 31st. Mackenzie's arraignment was June 2nd. I was there. I sat in the courtroom and watched them bring her in wearing an orange jumpsuit. She looked smaller somehow, less perfect. Her hair wasn't styled, no makeup, no designer clothes. When she saw me, her face changed. First confusion, then realization, then rage. She knew I had the documents. She knew Daniel had outsmarted her. Her face went pale. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Lisa Hammond, presented the evidence. The arsenic levels in Daniel's blood, the text messages, the financial records, the insurance policy, the Google searches, the chemical company receipts. Mackenzie's lawyer, a public defender named Marcus Webb, tried to argue that Daniel's illness was from cancer, not poisoning, that the elevated arsenic could be explained by environmental exposure, that the text messages were taken out of context. Judge Patricia Sorensen wasn't buying it. Ms. Patterson, given the substantial evidence presented, the severity of the charges, and the fact that you have access to significant financial resources through the life insurance policy that may motivate flight, I'm setting bail at $2 million cash. Mackenzie's parents, who were in the courtroom, gasped. They didn't have $2 million. Mackenzie stayed in jail. The custody hearing was June 9th. Mackenzie's parents, Gerald and Susan, fought hard. Their lawyer argued they could provide a stable home, they had financial resources, they were Lily's grandparents. But Robert Chen presented Daniel's letter. He presented evidence of my relationship with Lily. He presented testimony from the hospice nurse Patricia about how I'd been the primary support for Daniel in his final weeks. He presented evidence that Mackenzie had been controlling and isolating Daniel from his family, and that her parents had enabled that behavior. Judge Michael Torres read Daniel's letter out loud in court. "Please, Mom, take care of Lily. Don't let Mackenzie destroy her too." Gerald and Susan's lawyer tried to object. "That letter is hearsay. It's emotional manipulation." "It's a dying father's wishes," Judge Torres said, "and it carries weight in this court." He granted me temporary custody pending the outcome of Mackenzie's trial. I brought Lily home that afternoon. She was 4.5 years old, confused, grieving, scared. But when I tucked her into bed in the room I'd prepared for her, she looked at me and said, "Grandma, Daddy told me you'd keep me safe." "I will," I said, "I promise." The trial started September 18th, 2023. I attended every day. It lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented everything. Dr. Rachel Vance, the toxicologist, testified about the arsenic levels in Daniel's blood and tissue samples. "These levels are consistent with chronic low-dose poisoning over a period of months," she said. "This was not environmental exposure. This was deliberate administration." The chemical supply company representative testified about the arsenic trioxide order placed in April 2021 under the name M. Patterson and shipped to a PO box that was registered to Mackenzie. Brad Kellerman, who'd been arrested in Florida trying to board a flight to Costa Rica with $87,000 in cash, testified against Mackenzie in exchange for a reduced sentence. He admitted they'd been having an affair since October 2020. He admitted they'd discussed waiting for Daniel to die naturally, but Mackenzie had gotten impatient. He admitted he'd helped her research how to make the poisoning look like a natural illness. "She said it would be easy," Brad testified. "Small amounts over time. It would look like he was just getting sicker from stress or an autoimmune disorder. And then when he got the cancer diagnosis, it was perfect." No one would question it. Mackenzie sat at the defense table in a gray suit, hair pulled back, looking like she was attending a business meeting. She showed no emotion. The defense tried to argue that Brad was lying to save himself, that the text messages were fabricated, that Daniel had been paranoid and mentally unstable from his illness. But then the prosecution played the recording. Turns out Daniel had placed a small audio recorder in the kitchen in early May, hidden inside a smoke detector. He'd caught Mackenzie on tape talking to Brad on the phone. May 8th, 2023, 10:23 a.m. "He's almost gone," Mackenzie said. "Hospice says probably a week, 2 at most, and then we're free. $750,000 from the insurance, plus whatever's left in the accounts, plus the house. We can sell everything and move to Colorado like we planned. Start fresh." "What about Lily?" Brad asked. "My parents will take her," Mackenzie said. "I love her, but I can't do this anymore. Being a mother was never what I wanted. Daniel trapped me into it." There was a long pause. "Are you sure he doesn't know?" Brad asked. "He's too weak to know anything," Mackenzie said. "He sleeps 20 hours a day, and even if he suspected something, what's he going to do? He'll be dead in a week." The courtroom was silent when the recording ended. Mackenzie's face had gone from pale to gray. She looked at her lawyer. He looked at the ceiling. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. October 12th, 2023, sentencing day, I was there. So were Mackenzie's parents, looking devastated. So were Daniel's friends from work, from college, from his life before Mackenzie. Judge Sorensen looked at Mackenzie. Ms. Patterson, you systematically poisoned your husband over a period of years. You watched him suffer. You watched him die. You used his death to gain sympathy and social media followers while planning a life with your lover. You were willing to abandon your daughter to pursue this plan. The level of premeditation and callousness displayed in this case is among the most disturbing I've encountered in my 30 years on the bench. She sentenced Mackenzie to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mackenzie showed emotion then. She started crying. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to be free. You were free to leave, Judge Sorensen said. You chose murder instead. They took Mackenzie away. I watched her go, crying in her gray suit, no longer perfect, no longer in control. Brad Kellerman got 25 years in exchange for his testimony. His sentencing was the following week. I didn't attend. We settled the estate in November 2023. I got custody of Lily. The house in Shelburne went back to Tom Breslin since they'd been renting. The life insurance company denied Mackenzie's claim under the Slayer rule. Murderers can't profit from their crimes. The money went to Lily in a trust that I manage as guardian. $750,000 that will pay for her education, her future, her life. Mackenzie's parents lost in their custody appeal in March 2024. They moved to Florida. They send birthday cards to Lily but don't call. I think they're too ashamed. Last I heard, Mackenzie is at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, where she'll spend the rest of her life. She's tried to appeal. Every appeal has been denied. I used the money I'd saved in the secret account, which had grown to $28,400 by the time the trial ended, to pay for Lily's therapy. She sees Dr. Amanda Price twice a week. She's doing better. She still asks about her daddy sometimes, but she understands in the way a 5-year-old can that he's not coming back. We live in my house now, Richard and me and Lily. She has her own room decorated with butterflies and books. She's in kindergarten at Shelburne Community School. She's making friends. For the first time in her life, she gets to eat chicken nuggets and watch cartoons and be a normal kid. For the first time in years, I can breathe. I thought it was over. Then, 2 weeks ago, on January 28, 2026, Tom Breslin called me again. Margaret, he said, I'm doing some renovation work on the basement. You know, finally fixing that wall properly. I found something else. What? I asked. Another box, he said. Hidden deeper in the wall, this one has documents about Mackenzie's parents. Bank transfers, emails. Margaret, I think they knew. I think they were helping her. I'm driving to Shelburne tomorrow. So, what do you think? Did Judge Sorensen do the right thing with the life sentence, or should she have shown mercy? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for the update on what Tom found in that wall.